Welcome to the Courage Never Quits podcast, where members of the West Point class of 1986 tell their stories. I'm your host, Paul LaFontaine. As always, the views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not of West Point, the Army, or any organization. Let's go to the podcast. Jon Guy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it.
I'm delighted to get together again. We actually first physically met in London many years ago.
I know it's just funny to think about that. It was a long time ago. 20 years.
You were departing and I was coming in. I was the new guy.
Yeah, and I got you into my club.
You did. The Naval and Military Club, you said you must join. Yeah. And you forwarded me. You actually proposed me for membership in the Naval and Military Club in London. And I went over there, and the guy named Ian was in charge, and he was half horrified that another American wanted to join his club. And he said, "Would you like to join the club?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "The only rule is no jeans."
Yeah.
As if that's the only thing we could even conceive of wearing.
Oh my gosh. No, it was, I loved that club. I've been back as like a reciprocal member of another club since then.
That's great.
And I've appreciated it. But it was of a time. It's like my time in London. It was of a time, and
it was of a time.
We're never going back. That unfortunately. But that's
the only thing that I'm sad about is the number of brain cells that I might have left at that club, due to all the intellectual activity, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, that's a whole different story. Where are you sitting now in the world today, sir?
I am on this call from Flemington, New Jersey, my office. I've got my I Love Me wall behind me, as you can see, adorned with the West Point diploma and other great things from my past. So my company is based in Flemington, and I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So you're in drive from here.
That's your office. So somebody comes in and says, "I have a finance report." They look at that wall.
They look at that wall. Yes.
That is so strong. I got to tell you, class of 86, take note. If you have an office where anyone reports to you still, and somebody comes in to give you an expense report, you just look at my wall, right?
Exactly. I love that. And I've got enough of my military memorabilia back there too, which is good. So. Well, we're a veteran, now service disabled veteran-owned company. I'm kind of embarrassed about that part. The VA, advice for everybody out there, and it was one of our classmates, I forget who said it first, but go get checked out by the VA because you've earned it. I didn't really feel that way when I left the military the first time, but it was solid advice.
Very solid advice. Yeah. I myself went down that path. Bob Albino was one member. Andy Napoli was the one who really pushed me to get going. So, it's great.
I appreciate
it's great to get checked. It's not great to be a service disabled veteran.
But I mean, even like 1%, and, we can slap that moniker on the company, and we do some government contracting, but it was in a way, it was kind of validation for some of those things that I went through back in my first time in the Army. I don't know if it's worth saying, but I know I'm the last man standing now.
I was going to go there. We'll go a little bit out of sequence.
Okay.
The podcast really has no.
I'll let you direct the conversation.
No. I was going to go there right away because when we all get together, and I just saw you at West Point a little while ago. You're the one man still in uniform, who still wears his uniform. The last man standing, looking dapper. First of all, credit to you that you can still fit in a uniform. Congratulations.
Well,
all my uniforms shrank
I have money
to
spend on having it altered. That's the difference, right?
That's the thing. That's the thing. Talk about just what you're doing and why you're still in uniform, and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of, to me, I don't know. Maybe a few of us went through the same thing that I did. I know, having chatted with Lou Capizzuto about this, who is, the runner-up. Lou just officially retired from the military, 4 weeks ago.
Good gravy.
With a crazy break in service. His service was really distinguished. He deployed once. I haven't deployed. But, I got out before I finished my 5 years. And it was a bitter taste in my mouth because I'd had a really great experience to start off my time in Germany. great leadership, and then things kind of changed. And I don't know if other people had the same kind of experience where all of a sudden, it just didn't feel right. And it wasn't a career that I wasn't really interested in all of a sudden. When Chuck Cushman's podcast, he said, he was at a point in looking at the commander and saying, gosh, do I want to, do this in 15 years? For me, it was the best leader that I had worked for my first time in the Army, was promoted 6 months ahead of his peers after 11 years. And I was like, that's it?
That's the big reward.
That's the reward for being great. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to go off and make my millions. Well, that still hasn't happened yet, but I'm working on it. But
well, when we're young, we tend to summarize the world a little bit. And I totally understand what you were saying.
So I was out processing in August 1990 from Fort Knox, aboard burned out first lieutenant, with a training troop, so it was a cavalry troop. And I was just ready to get out and do something different. And then Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait the day I was out processing.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, oh, well, I'm sure they're going to call me up, because I transferred into the IRR, had all my paperwork set up that way. They asked me if I wanted to go into a reserve unit. I had no idea where I was going to live. I had no job, no idea what was next. And so as it goes in the Army, off I go. And then I'm hearing, as I'm interviewing, well, how are you out? We just lost 3 people to the reserves. They've just been called up. Yeah. And it was really strange, and the economy was a little weird at the end of 1990. I ended up getting a great job, but I was like, why am I not getting called up? And, fast forward, I found out later that is because they lost my records between Fort Knox and St. Louis. So they don't have any record of that transfer into the IRR ever having taken place.
Oh,
really? I think that's pretty simple, right? There's one form that I was missing. And if I'd had that form, it would have.
Then you probably would have had some sort of callback up. Yeah.
So anyhow, I have a great civilian career. Live in a nice, wonderful part of Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It's part of my personal wealth, this little town where I live. But as our classmates kept getting deployed over and over and over again, it's the first time you're like, yeah, team, yeah, go kick butt. Second time you're like, yeah. And the third time you're like, geez, what the hell am I doing? And that's kind of how it felt for me. It didn't sit right. I got to do something. And at the time, I was fairly active with the West Point Society. This would have been 2009. And I said, gosh, what can I do? Maybe I can help recruit for West Point and ROTC. So I finally get in touch with the right people. And the guy, some of you may know him, Major John Belmont, was the Northeast Regional Commander at the time. And John says to me, well, do you want to do it as a reservist? And you could earn a retirement. I was like, that sounds interesting. He's like, did you ever resign your commission? I'm like, no. I said, I have no idea what happened to me. I still have my old, red ID card.
Your records fell down behind a cabinet. So as far as they were concerned, you're still in active duty.
I'm like, I have no idea. And so he says, call up and they'll just transfer you over. That's we'll put you on attachment orders and we'll be.
How was it that you officially hadn't resigned your commission? How did that work?
I went into the IRR.
Because you were in the IRR. Okay, gotcha.
They just processed me out. They never actually transferred me into the IRR.
Right.
But Mark Wolf is, he's my hero with all this. So when I found out that, when I called up Fort Knox, or no, it wasn't Fort Knox at the time. I think it was St. Louis. And they're like, we don't know who you are. You've been archived. And I was like, gosh, I'm 45 years old and I'm archived.
I've been archived.
It was like, geez, that's bad. But she's like,
that's terrific,
if you like, you can apply for reappointment. I was like, really? Yeah, why not? That sounds interesting. So I reached out through the class forum, and Mark Wolf helped me out and walked me through the process. And as we're looking at this form, and it's like, what grade to be reappointed at? I was like,
there was your shot.
I'm 45 years old. I mean, like,
2-star?
left,
I don't know. Where should I start?
I left as a first lieutenant. I must have gotten promoted in the IRR to captain, but I'm not educationally qualified yet because I didn't finish my advanced course.
Right.
So I have no idea, but I looked at the reg and we're going back and forth through it, and it's like, no, I'm too old to be a captain. So he's like, put down 04. And you know what? If they don't agree, then they'll tell you.
Right.
So this is December 2009. And the little lady in tennis shoes doesn't forward my packet on time in February. So it hits the May board. Amazingly, I am accepted. Now, throughout all that process up to that point, I spoke with a few people, including Arbor Branch. Guy says, you must be a spook. We have no record of what happened to you. You just disappeared. I'm like, I'm not a spook.
You've gone off.
My daughter says that's exactly what a spook would say. You know? Right. But so I get to that point,
and that's the thing. Once they've determined that you're some sort of secret agent, that anything you say just confirms it, right?
Exactly. But I was like, would that help? If that helps me get reappointed, I'm all for it. So anyhow, finally in August, I get a call from them, and they say, you're good to go. You need to get sworn in. So you need an officer, retired officer can swear you in. And I was like, this is amazing, because it was a Tuesday, and that Tuesday night was my American Legion night. So I called up a friend of mine who was an Army Reserve colonel, and I said, hey, Larry, can you swear me in front of the post?
That is fantastic.
And so we agreed ACUs. So we go there, and we're wearing uniform. Luckily, there's a side-on shot of me, right, because that doesn't show the Major's Oakley sitting there as I'm getting sworn in. Fill in the paperwork, send it in. Next day, they're like, we can't accept this. You're coming back as a first lieutenant. I'm like,
oh, man.
What? A first lieutenant? So, well, do you want it or not? I'm like, hell yeah. Yeah. Well, I figured
we started with such high aspirations, Jon. We had big goals, and they knocked you all the way down to first lieutenant.
I thought it was kind of like, ooh, kind of embarrassed more than anything else, at that point. Wow. But I was like, yeah, how hard can it be to fix? Well, talk to Mark Esper. I mean, it really ended up going all the way up to the Secretary of the Army, years later to get fixed. God bless him. Amazing. But right. So I put on the hair shirt, so to speak, and walking around the Pentagon as a
first lieutenant,
as a 46-year-old first lieutenant being called chief, because they're like, no way are you first lieutenant. I'm like, yeah.
And now you were in the reserves.
Yeah. So Mark had helped me out and got me a position at the Office of the Chief Army Reserve, known as OCAR, as the FEMA coordination officer for the Army Reserve. So,
which just goes to show you, it's not who you know, it's what you know, because you were so knowledgeable that you got that role.
And Mark Mark was there in the group, and is a 04 billet.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to serve 2 up or 1 down. So kind of was like, yeah, all right. Well, I learned a lot of regs very quickly. Also learned the IMA program, which we joke is I am alone. So we're individual reservists that plug into active organizations. So it's not a unit reservist, if you will. But so I did the FEMA coordination officer for a few years, and actually got to work with Mark for a large part of that. Enjoyed it.
Brother, you have traveled the road. That is the road less traveled.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the definition of it.
But, I tell you, it was like something that I hadn't finished.
Yeah.
And I felt like, still to this day, I can't believe that they let me back in and gave me a chance to do this.
It's amazing.
If people say, oh, thank you for your service. I'm like, geez. Thank you. This has worked out amazingly well for me, just by great fortune. So my wife's disabled. She's she had MS, and she's confined to a wheelchair, can't use her arms or legs. Care for her was very expensive. And I didn't even know it when I got back in, but I was eligible for TRICARE. And TRICARE has been probably the biggest blessing of getting back into the Army Reserve.
Sure. Right.
So,
and now you're a major now, though.
No, I'm a lieutenant colonel now. So,
I'm sorry. Apologies. Lieutenant Colonel.
I mean, it's
Lieutenant Colonel now.
I have a 4% chance of getting promoted to colonel before I retire, right? A 4%.
And when do you have to retire?
Well, I should. Normally, you retire at age 60.
Right.
Or, depending on years of service for your grade. Well, obviously, I lost 20 years of in between there.
Yeah.
It's a 20-year break. So I am at right now just a couple weeks shy of 20 good years. So technically, and my 61st birthday and 20 good years are about the same date, just off by a week. But I did apply for an extension to go through to August 2026, which is the maximum. Age 62, unless you're a doctor, a chaplain, or a general. That's the max. So
so it could last another year. Could end on your birthday. What is your job now?
So my Army Reserve job, I got into the Reserve Foreign Area Officer program back in 2013, and had a short stint with DIA, and then worked in the UCOM J5 for 4 years, about almost 4 years, and then headed up the Reserve FAO program at the Pentagon for 4 years. And then ended up putting myself in a position that I couldn't get anybody else in. It's an 06 billet working for an ambassador at the foreign policy advisor. So she's a 3-star equivalent, the civilian deputy commander. And so I work in the front office when I go there. I just got back on Friday from 2 weeks working there. Work directly for the top leadership, sitting in these meetings and listening to all the top leadership speak. So it's quite an interesting time to be there.
Amazing. Now, if we go all the way back, we'll go back to the origin story. Wilmington, Delaware is your hometown.
Yeah, I grew up in Wilmington, and that was a good place to grow up. So I went to high school with another classmate. So William Francis Murphy, also known as Frank Murphy, we graduated together and haven't seen each other since. Now, how the heck do you go through 4 years at West Point?
How do you do that
without ever seeing that person? I never saw him. All 4 years, never once saw him. And we
it's funny. I traveled back to West Point with Tom Monahan, who grew up near me. We were Parents Club got us together. We never saw each other at the academy, really, maybe once. And then I saw him in Dallas at the reunion. It was like, all those years ago. So
it is just funny. The way it works. It's like, and then there's some people you can't stop bumping into in the weirdest places.
Right.
And that's just serendipity, I guess. And,
like Tater's a bad penny. Just keep coming back.
God bless him. I love it.
So what got you interested in the academy?
Sorry?
What got you interested in the academy?
Look, I knew I wanted to serve in the military. My original plan was to become a pilot and to fly jets, or maybe not, the fastest things, but maybe, but I definitely wanted to be a pilot. And then the Air Force basically said, well, sorry, that's not going to happen. You can be a backseat. And I was that age where, if I'm not flying, why do I want to do anything? So I'm like, well, I want to be on tanks then. So that was kind of.
Were you a big history guy growing up, or what was the source of the interest?
I don't know. I was playing Army in the backyard all the time when I was a kid. I don't know. Didn't we all to some extent? I don't know, but
sure.
And I was all just interested in it. I had an uncle who was a 67 grad. And he was, maybe I'd see him twice a year, but he was always such a model of, your archetypical West Pointer. And I was like, I'm not sure if I'm up to his standard, but,
Right.
It was still, and he coached me. And I thought, well, maybe with his coaching, I might actually measure up somehow, in time. So.
Now, were you part of the group that went and visited, and you went to the summer program, or how did that work? Being from the East Coast?
No, actually, I put in a packet for Army ROTC. Was really great. I got the 4-year scholarship in place before Thanksgiving. Felt really that was like a relief because my mother couldn't afford to send me to school, and my sister was struggling trying to make her way through college. So it was kind of a relief right there. And then I got notice of my West Point letter of assurance before Christmas.
Yeah.
So that was.
So when you showed up on our day, you'd never visited?
I visited once. I went for an overnight visit. And the way they did it back then, they paired us up with a plebe from our same state or whatever. And so I did an overnight visit, and I was like, yeah, this is pretty neat. This is kind of what I expected, from being mentally prepared by my uncle. And I was like, yeah, he seems like, all right, not a lot of due diligence on my part, just sounded good. So
there you go. Cool. So our day, show up. Did you do a lot of prep? Your uncle gave you some tips, or did you hit it fresh like the rest of us?
Our day advice to look around the mess hall, get a good, he's like, take it in. I think the best advice he gave me was philosophical, and that is just remember where you are and take stock in the fact that you are in such a unique and wonderful place. And it's a privilege as much as anything, and do your best. And I thought that everybody was going to be, foot taller than me and, 6 times stronger than me and 5 times smarter than me. And I found out, actually, I'm kind of okay here. This is good.
Yeah.
I fit in. So that was a nice feeling.
Okay. And then which company did you start out at?
I started out in G3. Go for it.
G3.
And it was funny because I've heard people talk about Major Young, who was the G3 TAC.
Gophers.
What a great leader. Interesting aside, when I went back to Fort Knox in 89, 90, that time frame, he was my next door neighbor and overweight and pushing a lawnmower, and it just wasn't the same. It just broke my heart to see him putting on
reduced to pushing a lawnmower after all the unbelievable stories about
never
him.
Meet your heroes.
Yeah, right. Never watch your heroes mowing the lawn.
Exactly, for God's sake. But we a bunch of us went from G3 to C2. So I was flying circus for the last 3 years, and what a great experience. Perfect for my temperament's a bit laid back, and I thought that was a great place to be and enjoyed it tremendously.
So so G3, part of the 3rd Regiment, I ended up there as an upperclassman in that area of the regiment of the Corps. So not a real Hayes company coming up, but decent standards, right?
Yeah, decent standards, but it was like you had to pass through F3 on your way up to G3. So, it was always on the lookout for trouble.
There's always F3 to deal with. We didn't go near it as yearlings.
Well, and what I love, though, is having been in G3, and I actually, second semester, Tom Sharp and Ray Tushoff were my roommates, and Ray didn't make it. Tom obviously did. Tom came over to C2 as well, which was great. But we were in the web, and once you learn to master the web there, that connection between, MacArthur and Washington Hall is like, wow, that's power. That's some power, especially as a plebe. You learn how to avoid going outdoors.
Well, as an upperclassman, it was wonderful, man. We explored all that stuff. Being connected to MacArthur was, you go up in there and study at night in a classroom. It was all kinds of
good stuff.
Great material up there. What, so C2, so I did glance at the howitzer. There's something there about you spending a lot of time sleeping, or apparently you didn't get out of your green guild till cow year. What's that all about?
Absolutely. So, best piece of advice I ever got in my life was about a month into yearling year. And I decided that when they weren't going to let me validate more than a semester of French, I was going to take a new language, and I chose German because I thought, well, I definitely wanted to, go to Germany. That was the front line at the time, right? So I wanted to be there. And so why not learn German? I wasn't sure what I was going to study, other than it wasn't going to be anything math, science, and engineering at that point. So I was thinking history, but about a month in, my German professor, Major Golgowski, takes me aside and he says, Cadet Guy, he's like, you should study German for your field of study. I'm like, German, sir? He's like, no, hear me out. He's like, comes very easily for you. And if this is your field of study, most of your classes are going to be easy, and you will have time to spend on the things that aren't easy. And I think easy was said so many times in that sentence that I was like, I'm all in. And
that's great advice.
Well, what were we taught? Don't make it harder than it needs to be. And at that point, it's like, you know what? The key is just to get a good position in the class and to make it through these 4 years, right? That's it. Survive. Right. And I started working on the art of invisibility sometime in my second or third year there. Yeah. So it'll kind of work out.
You just blew past something there. You validated French. What's up with? Were you naturally gifted at French, or did you study a lot?
I did French in high school, but they only gave me one semester of it. So I was like, well, I still had to do maybe that was a full year of it. And so if I have to do the French, well, why don't I just do something new? So the German, what it showed me was that I actually probably do have a capacity for language. So,
well, if you took high school French and you were validating it at West Point, yes,
not validating all of it, just only a semester.
Well, sure, but validating any of it.
But
I took 4 years of high school German and didn't validate anything in German. In fact, I barely passed.
Well, I have to say that I enjoyed it, and I ended up doing both German and French. And I found that not majoring, I got more language classes. So they were, it sounds arrogant. They were just easy A's for me, that it just kind of came very easy.
So German was your field of study?
German and French, yeah.
Good for you. That's amazing.
And I enjoyed it.
You were posted to Germany later. We'll get to that, but that certainly
helped.
It
came together. It was so nice. But I can draw from that decision, Paul, I can draw a direct or wobbly line to almost every good thing that's happened from a professional perspective. And it's interesting because I think back to that 19-year-old Jon Guy, and I'm like, man, well done. That was a good decision. And I thank myself, looking back, that I at least was intelligent enough to listen to good advice and recognize
advice. Yeah, great advice.
Choosing a path that was easy wasn't wrong, because we were always told, hard to write. But sometimes it's an easier right. And
well, I'll reframe it for you. You chose a path that aligned with your natural skills, and so it seemed easier to you, but you were basically going with what you were good at.
Yeah, well,
so if I had listened to that major myself, I would have majored in going to Mama Bravas, because that aligned with my interests. Anyway, so what did you get into as you got into an upperclassman? You found a field of study that matched your skills. What else? What did you do for fun?
Man,
as an upperclassman.
Hung out in the day room. I mean, I slept,
hung out. Valid path.
Oh, it's kind of funny to think back. It's like
nothing wrong with that, John.
No, and I was kind of broke because I had a Danish girlfriend, and that explains why I learned Danish.
You had hold on a second. You had a Danish girlfriend, and you learned Danish.
Yes. Well, my father was living in Denmark, and he thought I would come visit him more frequently if he hooked me up with a Danish girlfriend. And he was right.
That's a good dad right
there. On him, but that's neither here nor there. But no, that was.
I had a girlfriend from Massachusetts, and I still don't understand those people.
Well, exactly. You don't have a capacity for language, clearly.
There you go. Right there you go. See how it all comes together?
Yeah, perfect.
So the Danish girlfriend was while you're at the academy. Or later?
While I was at the academy.
Good gravy. Look at you.
So I spent all my money going back and forth, and my AT&T bill was like $600 or whatever the hell it was. But
there you go.
It all worked out.
Okay. Now, the armor branch, you said in high school it was either flying airplanes or being in the armor branch, so you kind of had your eye on that the whole time.
Exactly. I was pretty focused. We went out to, when we did the cadet field training, or whatever they called it, when we went to Fort Knox, remember, I was like, oh, this is my stuff. Yeah, this is it. And so, it was just
all fit.
I've always kind of been a planner. of sorts. And maybe that's a lot of us are the same way. I love Eisenhower's quote, plans are useless, planning is indispensable.
Plans are everything, yeah.
And so I feel like that. And so I was focused. I was high up enough in the class so I could choose the branch. And I was high up enough in the class that I could pretty much have picked any location within Armor Branch.
That's good. That's a credit to you. That's great.
And I picked 280 forward, which is funny because it was so funny because Chuck was the other slot that went to 280 forward. And I didn't know his quote origin story for going to the Iron Knights, but there I've learned it thanks to your podcast. Appreciate it.
A couple of smart guys ended up in those units. What so you chose that? What was your thinking on choosing that?
It was the closest unit to Denmark.
Well, there you go.
No, and I also loved. I looked at Berlin Brigade, but they had M60A3s, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to. I wanted to be on M1s, and did enough of my due diligence about the unit to know they were a lone brigade, a reinforced brigade in northern Germany, surrounded by Brits. My father's British, so I had a lot of connections to the Brits, Germans, Dutch. The Danes were up there in the mix too. So I figured that would play well with my skill set, having learned languages, and I might make some use out of the languages being up there.
And how did that manifest itself, the language skills and interest? By this time you have Danish, French, and German. How did that manifest itself?
Not so much in the beginning. I mean, when you're a brand new lieutenant, it was just great though, being at, because I lived out on the economy. So, being able to converse and do your daily living. 280 Ford had been it was established in 1979, that caserne, and they intentionally put the housing areas mixed in with the German town.
Right.
It was a little different than, certainly today. It's really sad. There are enclaves now compared to the way we were integrated, and you wore your uniform and around town, and nobody seemed to be bothered by it. But it kind of came to play later on because I was the battalion liaison officer for the last year or so. And I was able to go and organize training sites with the Germans, did a special project with the Dutch, was a regular visitor down in Fallingbostel with the British. So became good friends with the Scots Dragoon Guards, invited to a lot of their events. So learned a lot of my, kind of the stuff that my father never taught me because he wasn't really posh, but I learned a lot about British Army traditions, which is great.
Yeah. Which served you in good stead in those liaison roles.
It did, sure. And at the Naval and Military Club in London, England. So,
Indeed.
Where
jeans are not allowed. What, so the end there, we were all in a strange time. What you said you left prior to the 5 years. So what was in your head as you got out?
I remember having a conversation, and the wall was coming down. So the summer, I think it was May, June of 1989. I was the first lieutenant. I was at a German-American partnership event, or it was like a course/conference. And it was, all in German. It was great. Watching the TV with my German counterparts, and it's the Tagesschau, which is like their nightly news. And it says, reunification never. That was the theme.
Right.
And not even 6 months later, and everything's different. But as I'm sitting, I'm sitting with my boss. He was a West Point 74, and not a great leader. The leadership of the battalion, not great at that time, at least from my perspective. And they asked me, why do you want to get out? I'm like, well, because this isn't for me. I feel like I want to grow faster than the Army's going to let me grow.
Right.
And that was young and dumb it's a kind of an immature mindset. I was clearly immature at the time. So.
Okay. And now, how long did the Danish girlfriend last, if I may ask?
Too long. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to go into any
That's
detail on
for
that one.
that's for the reunion. We got a reunion coming up, just like we did at the Naval Military Club. I'll sit you down. I'll hear the rest of the story.
No,
but this is the children's
it
show,
all
so we're not going
worked
to talk.
out because
Family
fast
show.
forward civilian career, and I moved to Atlanta, and
Yeah, talk about your first show. You have quite an entrepreneurial streak, so I want to make sure we spend some time talking about your different adventures, because most of the time that we've known each other, you've been working in different companies and adventures, and we've chatted a little bit about that. So talk about your first job coming out of the Army.
First job coming out of the Army, I got a list of Danish subsidiaries in the United States, and used that as the kind of the list of targets. And I must have done 300 resumes and cover letters to send out. I mean, it was a lot of work looking for work. And it ended up coming between two companies, Maersk, which a lot of people know, big shipping company based in northern New Jersey, and this other company that I didn't initially target because I didn't recognize what EAC was. But if you know Denmark, you know what URKO is. And URKO is Østasiatisk Company, an East Asiatic company. And finally, the penny dropped, and I was like, oh my gosh, I definitely need to write them. They're a big company, a great company. And their subsidiary in the U.S., primary business was Heidelberg printing presses. So they had the agency for Heidelberg printing presses in the eastern 2/3 of the U.S. And the hiring process for Maersk was like slow and just like they're very, stiff ties and collars. And then I got to EAC and I was like, I like these people. They like me. And they made an offer like very quickly. And
there you go.
Just really, I knew I was in the right place. Hated the location, Queens, New York. But started out.
What was the first role? What was the first role?
I was service administration. So I worked for a guy that had been with the company for a long time. He was terrified I was going to take his job. And the first layoff, I took his job.
Well, maybe he knew something.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
The old working for someone who's terrified you can take their job.
I didn't move into his office. He had been a smoker, and that office was gross. And so I stayed in my cubicle for
scraping the wall down. Right.
But no, again, what a great speaking Danish helped me get in with EAC. Yeah. And speaking German, when the German manufacturer took over the agency in 1992, all of a sudden, at the end of 92, all of a sudden, now speaking German's a big plus. So now...
That's amazing.
Now, so like I said, I can draw these interesting lines through the language skills, but learning German really played me well.
I love that. I think that's great.
And so... because I was responsible for everything non-technical in the service department, about 300 service techs, 11 regions across the U.S. And in 1994, we moved the company headquarters from Queens, New York, down to Atlanta, Georgia, or Kennesaw, Georgia, precisely. And, sounded great. So we moved down with the company, and it took me a little while because I didn't know people. I didn't really know people in New York, but I hung out a lot with the Danish guys, but a lot of them didn't make the move down to Atlanta. And so when it's like the only people who know are your colleagues, and that kind of runs its course after a little while. So decided I wanted to have a social life, and I got set up on a blind date. Not really the right fit. But after dinner, we went to her pub, which was an Irish pub, and across the parking lot, I saw the Churchill Arms pub, and I said, "Oh, an English pub. All right, I'm going to check that place out." So I checked that place out, and I found like a little group of friends that kind of helped serve as my foundation for a little bit of a social life, and I started liking Atlanta a little bit more, and the job was getting boring. I could do it standing on my head. And almost at the same time, I was set up on a blind date with Susan, who's now my wife. Mm-hmm. And so she's a Mississippi girl.
Okay.
Now, here, sorry, I digress all the time, but fun fact.
That's fine.
So Susan, her older brother was absolutely best pals with somebody who turned out to be one of the guys that I went through Armor Officer Basic course with.
Really?
For those of you who were in my Armor Officer Basic course, it was Mouth of the South, Tim Ray. And so fast forward, Susan and I are engaged. By now, I've been recruited to work in the headquarters in Germany, and she's going to join me later on that year. We're getting married, and she was visiting home in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and she's like, "There's this guy who says he knows you," and I told him it's bullshit. And I'm like, "Who is it?" She said, "I should tell you that it's the Mouth of the South." I'm like, "You know Tim Ray?" And she says, "You know Tim Ray?" I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me." Well, he was like another brother.
Yeah.
Is that one of those weird connections where you just have to shake it?
That's a great
small world. But
yeah.
So those of you have heard Tim Ray.
And so did you move over to Germany with that job?
Yeah. So I went to corporate marketing, and again, speaking German was a big plus. Although everybody wanted to speak English with me because they were under pressure to speak more English.
Right.
But as an American, I went to I didn't fill out the Meldschein, all the requests for all my things like the phone and the computer. I went to the people like we do, Americans, you go and say hello and ask for things nicely. And I went down to ask for my parking badge for the garage.
Right.
And spoke German with the people there, of course, and they gave me my parking badge. And so I just what do we do? You park at the first parking spot, most convenient parking spot that doesn't say reserved, right? Or don't park here. Right. And so I did that every day at the first parking level and went up the elevator with other executives in the company all the time. I wasn't an executive, but I dressed well, and I was international, and nobody knew who the heck I really was. Well, one of my colleagues, he's like, "You're not allowed to park here. This is for the executives. We're supposed to park on P2 and P3. Right. He's like, "How do you not get a ticket?" And then he sees my little parking badge and has a little R on it. He's like, "How did you merit a reserved parking space?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just asked for my parking badge." I said, "They probably just didn't want to run the risk of giving me a non-reserve badge."
Right.
Figuring that if I didn't know better, then I would.
What an operator you are. So, what an operator. I love that. You went down and chatted them up in their native tongue, and you got an R badge.
But that helps because then they got used to seeing me every day, and they knew who I was. And so I got selected to be an executive assistant for one of the board members. And I was a terrible executive assistant. But I learned a lot.
Good linguist.
And then,
good linguist.
And then he gave me the opportunity to start up a used equipment division for the group. So,
good for you.
So I took it over. We were doing about 150 million euros of business around the globe. And I was able to double it within a couple of years.
Look at you.
And
there you go.
I finagled myself the site in the UK. I took over a site that was going to be closed. It would have been bad news, 200 jobs lost. And I took it over. Only 30 people worked directly for me at the time. But it was good news. It was given a lot of exposure, publicity, whatever. And every time people came to the UK, wherever they were from, they always came through my site. So it was really nice. And enjoyed that.
And that's how you ended up in the UK.
That's how I ended up in the UK, London. It was such a cool thing to tell Susan. We came back from a meeting. I said, "Well, we're not moving to Leipzig. We're moving to London." I'm like, "This is great."
Good news.
Had a great time. Great time there. Our daughter was born there.
Okay.
And
so let's talk about. So you just the one daughter?
Just one daughter. Unfortunately, Susan really became ill about 2 weeks before Elizabeth was born. Okay. And So it was clear we weren't going to have any more, which is kind of a shame. But we got a good one. We
got a
if
good
you're
one.
going to do it right, we did it right. Got a great kid. She's a nurse now, working in a hospital and making money. And
I have one child, and I like to say, because I'm a relaxed guy, hey, I'm 100% all in on you. You better not blow it.
Exactly.
So you got the one daughter, okay. And so talk now about your journey into entrepreneurialism. You got that fantastic office there. That's not a cubicle anymore. You're in Flemington, New Jersey, head of an empire. Talk about how you decided to go out on your own.
Yeah,
because you could have stayed there and run UK and German and Danish subsidiaries
I
forever.
wanted to do that. I tell you, it was tough to leave, but I knew that as an expat, I needed to reset my clock in a way.
Sure.
And they offered me to take over a 30% subsidiary based in Philadelphia, ironically, really close to where I grew up. Life is like that. But we ended up finding home. And, it's everything before this, I had always treated the kind of the job, the career as the constant and the home as the variable. Mm-hmm. And we both quickly realized what we had in Newtown and decided, okay, this is home and the job's going to be the variable. And it ended up being that way. Politically, the company changed. And so I left the company in 2008, tried to start up something on my own. The only thing I got out of those 2 years trying to start my own little business was walking my daughter to the bus stop every day for 2 years, which was a gift. And I think back on how lucky that was, that I somehow was able to afford living through those 2 years like that with very little income. And then I was looking to buy a business, and Bob Zinnan and I, Bob's a classmate, we met each other at a West Point Society thing, and we were going to team up. We looked at a bunch of companies, none of which were interesting for me. We did look at Waltron, that's my company here. He wasn't as jazzed by it as I was. We did put in an offer. They turned down our offer. I won't go into details because I don't want to say anything in any way that might be perceived as negative to Bob. I'm so grateful for him teaching me the process of trying to acquire a company. He ended up finding a company on his own, which is great. Okay. I ended up taking Waltron. An opportunity. I'm so glad that came to me, and I made every mistake in the book. And
so give us a high level of what Waltron does, just so we get a picture of what you do day to day. So what does Waltron do?
We manufacture instruments that analyze water. Very, very pure water that goes into water and steam cycles mostly. So power plants, industrial processes. The water's too pure to drink, if you will. So, I don't know if it's true. I got to do the math again. But our sodium analyzer, that somebody told me once, can analyze the equivalent of a grain of salt in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which is just mind-blowing. So, and nobody dropped the second one, right? Something like that. So,
and what surprised you about being your own boss and having your own company? And the reason I ask that is there's lots of conventional wisdom about it, but what was it that really was different than what you thought?
Well, this is the company I could afford. But the reality was, I think you have as many, if not more, problems with a small company as you do with a medium or larger company.
Sure.
And what the biggest mistake I made was not getting more money to start with, and maybe even accepting a little bit less equity and taking a bigger loan in the start. I probably would have wasted a lot more money, but I wouldn't have had such a slow start. And it was hard going. There was a lot of times there where people did their best to try to destroy us. And I mean, I don't give up easy, that's the, I mean, that's who we are as West Pointers. We don't go down easy. And
hey, if you ever think you're likable, buy a business. You'll find out how unlikable you get real quick to your competitors.
It wasn't the competitors.
I hear what you're
saying. The old man that sold me the company, 80-year-old old man, did his best to try to kill me off.
Well, isn't that funny? Yeah,
I could go into far too much detail for a show like this, but
no, it's fine.
But we're still here, and
That's great.
I am of
11 years on your LinkedIn. It says you own this company.
Look, Paul. I know a lot of people smarter than me. I know a lot of people that work harder than me. I don't know a lot of people as lucky as me. And
Fair enough.
I was fortunate to find this company. I love what I do. I have a small team of people. It requires personal leadership. And, my why is about leading people with ethics and, allowing them to be, to grow, allowing them to live their lives, and that this isn't the center of everybody's life. But if I can help them achieve their whys, then that's good for me. And that's what drives me. That's what makes me look forward to walking up the path to work, and hoping that I can make other people feel the same way about their time here.
That's great. And what do you do for fun now? I mean, how do you balance that? Because it's a very busy thing being in charge of a company.
Being a reservist, and like this, it's crazy. This month alone, I've been to Germany twice, Germany and back twice. First time was to do a presentation to a chemistry conference in German, and then came back.
Goodness.
And then went to Germany for 2 weeks of reserve duty, and then came back. And now my daughter and I are leaving on Friday for a week of vacation in England. Going to watch cricket. I like cricket.
You do?
I do like cricket.
Okay.
I got into it when I lived in England, and the T20s and ODIs are the gateway drug to the Test match. And once you know what if and can love watching.
I went to one cricket match. That's how it is. So I'm glad you and I didn't hang out, and you would ask me to go to cricket.
Oh, I love the cricket. Anyway. If anybody wants to
it's like baseball without the speed.
I'm not a stats person. I'm not that. I just enjoy it. I have the love of the game. So.
Oh, goodness. Good for you, though. That'll be fun. I just saw my son on a trip. It's a lot of fun seeing the kids out and abroad, see them as adults and having a good time.
We travel well together. She's 25, so she's young, unattached, but we travel well together, and we'll have an interesting time. Whatever we do, not all of it's planned. That's the best part. So we plan.
This isn't a loaded question. I'm just curious because when we go to our reunion here in a couple of years, people will probably ask you, how long do you run the company? Have you thought about it? Is it a thing you could do kind of forever, or do you say, "Hey, I think I'm going to wind it down
the right amount of money"? It's everything's available. I always say, an entrepreneur, my chair's for sale.
Even all this stuff I got on the wall behind
you can buy all of that. I could probably replace that.
You can have it all.
Buy it all. No, the moment that you are not willing to sell, it's a lifestyle company, and you don't make enough money for this to be a lifestyle company. So
okay.
But in terms of value, what I paid for it and what it's worth today are dramatically different. And I've been fortunate. Now I've had people walk in the door with skills that I can't believe. Had an operations director who's probably the best engineer I've ever known. Who's transformed our engineering and operations, and had a CFO kind of walk in the door same way. And now I have a head of global sales that just came to me from a competitor that I was stupid to let him go.
And then you manufacture this all outsourced, right? I imagine, right? So you have a contract manufacturer, or do you manufacture it?
We American made, it's
Is that right?
So, over the last 4 years, I've been bringing stuff back here to the U.S., things that we had made for us elsewhere.
Well, you're ahead of the crowd then. That's great.
And I'm ahead of the crowd because I've got subsidiaries in China and Europe where we can start using them as the foundation for regionalization. I really think, read the book, Peter Zeihan's book, The End of the World is Just the Beginning. I think I
have read that book, actually.
I think it's coming true. And so I've been prepared for this. And so
there you go.
I'll do this.
So you have some manufacturing capacity
another
in
2 or 3 years, and then it'll be time to hand the baton off to somebody else.
2 or 3 years.
I'm the fourth entrepreneur to own this company. It's never been a family business in 122 years. And hopefully it'll be another entrepreneur that'll take over from me.
So your business is 122 years old. Okay.
That's cool. There's a lot of, resilience in a company of that age, even if we're not doing the same thing as we did back in 1903.
Of course, right? But that's a legacy of sorts that does mean something, and so that's great. Okay, that's great.
I enjoy it. Like I said, I look forward to coming to work. I wish that on everybody. Spend half of your waking hours at work. You might as well enjoy it.
I think we met in 2004 in London, and you were even talking about this experience back then about you desiring to look into doing something like this even back then.
Yeah,
and we talked
actually,
on the phone.
It was 2002 because that's when we left. But,
okay.
I've always wanted to do this. I just didn't know how to do it, and Bob taught me how to do it. And like I said, I'll forever be grateful for that.
The fact that we met 23 years ago in London, I won't actually say that. Otherwise, it would be depressing. So,
I had a little bit less. I had a little bit more hair back then. You don't look any different than.
I had. Anyway, it's the lighting. What? So, with all the luck that you've had and the amazing run you've had, what advice would you give yourself? Is there any course correction you would have given to yourself back in your life?
Well, like I said, I've made a lot of mistakes. And so one of the things that gives me pleasure and kind of where I think, my next phase of my business career will be trying to help sponsor / coach, mentor entrepreneurs, especially veteran entrepreneurs. But so that they don't make the mistakes I did. Like I said, the prime mistake was just not getting enough ammunition when I went into war. Went to war with two magazines drawn down, and that's not the way to do it. But
you become a
in
mentor.
terms of like doing this, I'm so glad I took this path. It gave me the freedom, especially with a disabled wife, allowed me to have a lot more flexibility and also to be able to give that flexibility to others who may need it.
And also allowed you to stay in to get what's coming up on your 20th year of service, right?
Yeah, can you believe it? I worked for this guy. So after getting in, and I worked for a company, and I got mobilized. And it was supposed to be a 30-day mob for Hurricane Sandy. So it was 2012. And this guy always wrapped himself in the American flag. And they curtailed my tour to 2 weeks. I came back. The day after I got back from Thanksgiving, he lets me go. And he says, I can't have you leave like that again. I was like, that's illegal. But you get a damn. And I was like, I have to have better control over my life because this is important to me. Doing
everyone's a patriot until you hit them in the budget line. So, right.
I think honestly, I think it's good. I was joking with the 3-star at UCOM last week. It's kind of a busman's holiday, and I realized Americans don't know what a busman's holiday is. That's a bus driver. And what does he do? He takes a trip with his family, so he's driving, so, kind of when I go to Germany, I'm not the boss by any stretch of the imagination. I'm working for the bosses. And I kind of understand what it's like to be a chief executive. And so I think I'm actually a really good support for them in that respect, but it is kind of like a busman's holiday.
Yeah. There you go. Jon Guy, thanks so much for joining. It's always a pleasure to see you at the different events. You're very active when we get together as classmates, and it's always good to catch up here.
I want to do my retirement next year. So what I do need to know who was the first of our class to actually go on to military service. Keith Ramsey's name has been put forward. I know there's a few others that may be. So talk amongst yourselves. Don't make me go to the castle and find out from Castle Grayskull who was the first to be in military.
We just have to outdo Hokanson and have like the most massive party ever.
Well,
if you're the last one in the door.
I think that we need to have the first and the last, and I'm an asterisk. The reality.
Right. But man, Hokanson had these cookies. We got to get the cookies going, man, because he had these amazing cookies catered. That
they were pretty cool.
That right there, put me on the cookie committee.
I know, but I'm an asterisk for my service because I had that long break. Those guys, Scott was the last one to stay in the whole time and go off active duty last September.
Amazing,
which
amazing.
Probably kind of deserves the award. So, but I'll keep serving until they kick me out.
Yeah, but we'll make it the best retirement party. Jon, thanks so much. We'll see you at the reunion.
Right.
I appreciate
Thanks, Paul. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Courage Never Quits podcast, where any member of the class of 1986 who is willing to tell their story will be a guest. To get the word out and stay up to date on the latest episodes, hit the like and subscribe button. With over 900 living graduates, we have a lot of stories to tell, and you don't want to miss any of them. We'll see you in the next episode.